Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Wow, it's been a crazy last 24 hours. We have pipelines blowing up. We have hurricanes battering the coast of Florida. Notice the theme here. Water, oceans, flood, and I don't know what the future holds. When we think about the right-left paradigm and we understand that, the countries are all kind of playing a game with us, and that at the top, they're kind of all on the same side. It doesn't really open the door for some kind of nuclear exchange, does it? When you think about that, unless it has to do with mass sacrifice of all of us, which we've seen that happen before as well, haven't we? During world conflicts and world events. But this whole pipeline thing definitely looks like it was done by us. And so the logical response, if you're thinking in terms of the world stage, would be for Russia to retaliate, right? So all I'm saying is be prepared, okay? Be prepared. Just make sure that you have everything you need, a couple months supply of food. And I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you this because things have shifted, haven't they? Things have shifted. Now, we do have some subscribers who live in Florida, and apparently you guys are okay. You have power. Rachel's in the chat. She's in Florida. She has power. So things weren't as bad as we originally thought in some of the areas of Florida. I don't know about all of Florida. There are lots of pictures of flooding and things like that. But Rachel is here. She has power. She's got internet, of course. And so at least the area that she was in is okay. But as we begin to transition into this post-COVID world, I suspect that things will shift. Now, I have a show scheduled for tomorrow. I was just thinking about how right after Blind 11, they were telling people not to wear masks. And then 19 years later, they were forcing people to wear masks. And there's something about that we'll get into tomorrow. I still have to do some research on that and find out how all of this fits together. But there's something about the masks, isn't there? And the breath of death instead of the breath of life. That will be tomorrow's show. Thanks, Mac, for joining the channel membership. Now, today we're going to get into Lincoln. And Lincoln really was the first hypodermic needle president. We'll get into that. He was also the first possessed president and the first copper telegraph line president. We'll be breaking all that down today. And we're also going to be talking about how the dark pool is infecting humanity as we speak. Speaking of large bodies of water and oceans and the whole water theme, it's coming around full circle. And all of it's happening through the tip of a needle. It's the dark DNA. Now, our journey begins today with the story of a man of color dying in a dark pool. Now, this is all spiritually symbolic. In this case, he died of Legionnaire's disease in an Airbnb hot tub in New Zealand. Let's read this. A New Zealand woman is gearing up to sue Airbnb following the death of her husband. Sandra Birmingham, 54, was visiting Gozo, Malta. Her family in 2016 when her husband Paul became sick after using the hot tub in their Airbnb rental. Paul died a few days after returning home from the Christmas holiday from Legionnaire's disease. Birmingham is now fighting against the VRU community. She believes the contaminated hot tub was the culprit that took her husband's life, suing for $1.3 million. I do not believe the jacuzzi had been properly maintained. and it had not been used for some time before our arrival. Birmingham has engaged in a 6-year-long legal battle with Airbnb since her husband's death in 2016 because it was contaminated with bacteria that led to her husband's demise. Paul only went in the hot tub once on New Year's Eve, and he was in the water for just seconds. The bacteria is airborne, and I believe he was infected soon after he checked into the farmhouse. Medical professionals determined Paul died as a result of Legionnaire pneumonia. Notice the theme here. Not being able to breathe. The dark pool. Dark waters. Possession. The word pneumonia actually means spirit. It's the spirit entering the body, is what this is really all about on a spiritual level. So, I thought I would open today's show with this very telling story about how all of this works. Now, here's where things get really weird. Because yesterday, one of you asked me to look at this film called Hot Tub Time Machine. Many of you will remember this film. It released in 2010. And it was about a group of people that travel back in time inside of a hot tub. Dark waters. Now, how does all this fit in? Well, how they ended up traveling back in time was because a particular energy drink was spilled on the controls for the hot tub. This is it right here. It was called Chernobyl. And here we have the Russian component to this, don't we? Chernobyl. Now, we had covered Chernobyl and that event, what that was about. Here's some screenshots. There's the energy drink here. This is them sitting in the hot tub. And here's another image here of the energy drink actually spilling into the control panel. There you go there. And of course, something else. If you look at the actual logo on the real drink, it has a portal, a cube, or a hexagon, which just so happens to match pretty much exactly what's on Trump's coat of arms. I'm going to zoom this image up here. The hand holding the lightning bolt coming out of a cube. And then I'm going to go over here and look at the top of Trump's coat of arms. A hand holding an arrow, which is synonymous with the lightning bolt, and coming out of a square or cube. So here we have yet another time travel connection between Trump and a time travel movie. Now, let's go back to Hot Tub Time Machine and look at the plot here. I didn't capture screenshots of this movie yet. I'd actually watched it before, but it wasn't until today or yesterday that I realized the connection between the Trump coat of arms and the energy drink in the movie that spills on the hot tub, causing them to go through time. Now, what's this plot all about? Let me go back and make sure you guys are with me, and we will keep going with the plot of Hot Tub Time Machine. Then we'll get into Lincoln a little bit later in the show. Now, this is crazy. So, look at the dates that they travel back to in time. Let's go up here. Where'd it go? The dates that they travel back to is 1986. We're going to look at some footage of Trump in 1986. and you're going to be blown away at what was revealed. Of course, they have to find their way back from 1986 to 2010. How old was Trump in 1986? He was 40 years old. In 2010, he was 64, which is the reverse of 46, the year he was born, 1946. So, I decided to go back to the future, as they say, and find footage of Trump from 1986 to see what he was up to. And watch this as the Matrix reveals the truth about all of this. About describing the Twin Towers as Lincoln and his wife. Now, this is the show in which he enters Trump Tower with some guests. And they're standing at the Empire State Building. Now, if you don't remember, right after 9/11, Trump was interviewed. And he said that when the towers fell, that they were the tallest buildings in the world. And he said before that, 40 Wall Street was the tallest building in the world. And now that the towers had fallen, 40 Wall Street was now the tallest building in the world. These were his comments, pumping up his 40 Wall Street building moments after thousands of people died. Sociopathic comment. Nobody would say something like that. Look how tall this guy is. Wow. Ooh. Look at this. Look how tall this guy is. He almost hits the top of the covering there. Look how much taller he is than these people. Let's keep watching this. This is crazy. And this couple on a tour of New York, and he shows them Lincoln, what he calls Lincoln and his wife, as the Twin Towers. Now, remember that, because when we get into Lincoln, this is all going to connect together.
That's Lincoln and his wife.
So here they enter Trump Tower. Wow, and I just got deja vu right now. Whoa.
Trump Tower?
A little.
You just heard of it?
Now, even though what you're looking at is not fully made out of copper, a lot of it is like marble and stuff like this inside of Trump Tower's lobby, but it has a very copper, referencing a 60 Minutes episode that basically did not have good things to say about Trump, something about him kicking people out of their homes. And this couple that Letterman has picked up off the street to come on a tour of New York doesn't have a very good picture of Trump in terms of their opinion about him. That fox fur coat, Fox of course is 66 or 666, but that alone doesn't prove anything. But it's interesting that that's the one of the few items that they talk about, and they talk about killing the fox and how to kill the fox.
Thank you very much. Go on in.
Then they enter Trump's office. I don't know which floor his actual office is on, but we do know that his penthouse is on the... That kind of explains the long-standing relationship that he has with a particular country. And there you see the tree in front of it. Let's keep watching here. Front and center in his office, just above his 1986 episode, not episode, but a news broadcast. This one about Mar-a-Lago. Again, 1986. We're traveling back in time.
Talking about this fancy mansion in Palm Beach for some time.
That is true. It's incredible.
We're finally going to hear about it now. Coming up next, a tour of a remarkable mansion. It is the full house of Donald Trump.
Time now, 38 minutes past the hour.
38 minutes past the hour. Of course, 38 is 19 times 2. Let's keep watching. They come back from the commercial break.
It's now 19 minutes before the hour.
And then it's 19 minutes before the hour. Notice all the 19s.
Well, back in 1927, Marjorie Merriweather Post, one of the richest and most famous women of the day, built a house in Palm Beach, Florida.
So they're talking about the lady who actually built Mar-a-Lago, and she's actually, let's see here. Oh, here she is here. This is her right here. And what I want you to notice next are the numerical synchronicities with her life and death. She died one day after 9/11 in 1973, which is the year that it opened. It opened on April 4th, 1973, and she was age 86 at her death. And I want you to keep watching because there are some pretty profound numerical synchronicities. Remember, she died at 86, and this is a 1986 interview that Trump granted to Mar-a-Lago. So he was obviously sending a message about the future collapse of the towers.
But not just any house. It has 118 rooms,
100 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6 rooms.
half of them bedrooms, 33 bathrooms,
33 bathrooms, as well as Trump Tower also has 33 rooms. I think it was bathrooms. No, wait, what is it? Oh, it's 33,000 square feet of office space in Trump Tower.
a theater, and just in case, 3 bomb shelters. During the 70s, the federal government held it as a presidential retreat, but gave it back because it couldn't afford the $1 million a year upkeep. Well, the house is Mar-a-Lago. Now, if the government couldn't afford it, you might wonder who could. Meet Donald Trump, real estate man and multi-millionaire.
That's right. This is the great entrance hall to Mar-a-Lago. The tiles are from 1400, and they're ancient Spanish tiles, and throughout the house they
So 1400, of course, 7 and 7, that's his number.
have 36,000 of these
36,000 tiles, which is 6 times 6.
tiles. They're each in themselves a work of art, and it's a very special entryway, as you can see.
So you walk in here and people start gasping just about at this point, right?
Well, they are very, they're amazed at what they see, as I was when I first walked in, and as you were.
When you first walked through that door, the first time you walked into this house, what did you think?
I couldn't really believe it. This was one of the great treasures of the world. It's considered the #1 home far and away in America, and I personally just couldn't believe it.
And when you see it, you believe it. The ceiling glistens with 1,000 gold leaf wings. Bristol crystal chandeliers light the 60-foot-long living room.
1,000 gold leaf wings, like 1,000 points of light. And then she mentions a number 17, and you'll hear this number repeated twice, which of course is the alphanumeric equivalent to the letter Q.
7 antique silk tapestries adorn the walls, and the huge stone Italian Gothic fireplace still works.
I have not used it, no. I have not. I'm concerned about using it. I don't want any smoke in the room, to be perfectly honest. In fact, if you notice, we have Mrs. Post's picture right alongside of my wife's picture with town and...
So he puts Ivana's picture next to Mrs. Post. Post died in 73, and Ivana died at 73 years old. Twin pictures, Twin Towers. Twin Towers opened in 1973.
country. So we really pay a certain reverence to Mrs. Post and what she was able to create, because she created
The Wizard.
a magical house. It's a fantasy house.
But are you going to change this room at all? I mean, when
No.
You're not going to do anything?
No.
No personal Trump touches here?
No. Believe it or not, no.
That's right. Everything is going to stay exactly the way Mrs. Post would have had it.
So the Mar-a-Lago hotel or whatever estate is frozen in time. Nothing has been changed.
This is the dining room. How many does it seat?
Well, I guess it seats as many as you want. It just, I really couldn't even tell you. It seats from anywhere from 2 to probably 50 or 60 people, depending on the way you set it up.
And setting it up is an art in itself. Mrs. Post left 17 sets of china in the
There's the number 17 again. 17 sets of china. Q.
house. That means the Trumps can entertain 36 of their friends
They can entertain 6 times 6 friends.
for 19 straight nights. And
19 straight nights is the number 19 again. Third time in this show.
Never use the same set twice. Now that's a lot of China.
That's a lot of China. Are you awake now? China was coming all along, wasn't it? COVID-19.
She has a house that...
Use the same set twice. Now that's a lot of China.
She has a house that slept 56. It has 56 bedrooms.
Now, Trump did increase the amount of bedrooms at Mar-a-Lago to 58 bedrooms. It's no longer 56, which the 58 bedrooms would match Trump Tower, which is 58 stories tall. Now, you're probably asking, how can it be 58 stories tall and his penthouse be on the 66th floor? Well, that's how he numbered the floors.
And each person that would come as a guest would have their own car and driver. They'd each have a Rolls Royce, the room, the driver, the maid, their own cook. She lived a style that nobody's lived in this country. Nobody in this country has ever lived that style.
Now these glasses, they're light, they're all actually hand-painted?
Yes, all hand-painted, Venetian, and truly magnificent, and not produced. You couldn't get glass like this today.
Now I know you've already eaten in this room, you've actually
Yes.
had a dinner party. When you sit in here with people all around this table and you eat off of this gold and these are lit, and you sit in this room, what do you think?
I say, what am I doing here? How did this happen?
As a matter of fact, that's precisely what a lot of other people would like an 18-room mansion.
So basically, they go on to describe the real estate deal. Apparently, he got this Mar-a-Lago at half price just a few years before this interview took place.
Was nowhere near that price.
That if you use the number that you're using, you probably wouldn't be too far off.
The rest of the deal reportedly includes $3 million for the mansion's furniture and $2 million for the beach. An incredible deal.
I've been all over the world, and I've seen the great thing in the world, not only in this country, but in the world that's comparable to Mar-a-Lago.
You've left it exactly the way she had it.
Exactly.
There's something that's interesting to me is this little thing here on her door. And you pull this little thing down, and it says, "Do not disturb."
And what it really says is, Dawn, Organization Trump, disturb the resting.
Disturb resting.
That's correct. That's from a different age.
So people who are somewhat concerned that
That's from a different age. There's another time travel reference.
they'll start having tour buses come through here, that Mr. and Mrs. Trump will turn this into a real tourist attraction, you can rest their fears?
I can rest their fears. I mean, they were also concerned that I was going to turn the house into a great hotel casino, and I have no intention of doing anything like that.
So on winter weekends, Donald Trump says you will find him here, entertaining friends and family with a staff of 25, safely protected by a security force of 30. At the young age of 39, Donald Trump has found his castle. Lucky Donald Trump, and I must say he was very kind, because I think he originally thought this tour would take something like 15, 20 minutes, and as you could tell, those rooms are gigantic, and we must thank the lighting people that came along and lit this house beautifully, and it took him several hours to take us through, so he said that's the first time he'll do it, and the last.
We just saw it. Now, Mar-a-Lago is the name of it. That is, a 1920s film star.
I don't know, but it means from sea to ocean.
Mar-a-Lago.
And it's Mar-a-Lago. Yeah, translation.
All right. Coming up next, we're going to take you to a Florida tennis camp where they train you for mind games as well as for good...
Mind games. So, as you can see, looking back in time, the Matrix reveals itself for what it is, doesn't it? Now, I looked everywhere for this supposed 1920s film star named Mar-a-Lago, and I could not find her anywhere. So she's been disappeared from the history books for one reason or another. Maybe too much was revealed, and they had to erase that fraction of history. Let me go back into the chat, and we're going to get into Lincoln and how that connects to the hot tub time machine as well. So make sure you guys are with me, and we'll keep going with this. Now, next we're going to talk about another dark pool. the tidal basin of Washington, D.C. Here it is right here. Dark pool, dark waters. Now, what is this about? Well, obviously, you see to the left of this the outline of Washington, D.C. from the Capitol building through the White House lawn, the mall. All I did was outline this down to the Washington Monument and here to the Lincoln Memorial. And what you have is a giant hypodermic needle. Now, how could this be? How could there be the outline of a hypodermic needle in the Washington, D.C. landscape? And why is it pointing to Abraham Lincoln's memorial? And why does it have the dark pool next to it? Well, the dark pool is the fallen angel DNA. It's what's in the needle, is what it is. Now, we did a video also exposing that the needle is bruising the woman in the heel. You can make it out here. As the heel comes around the Washington Monument, which is the obelisk, and we actually outlined what appeared to be a foot right here in the landscape. You can't see it here because of the angle, but imagine here's the ankle coming down. Here's the heel of the woman. Remember, the Bible says that this serpent will bruise her in the heel. And here you see the arch of the foot here, and then the toe becomes Lincoln Memorial, is the toe. Now, you can go back and look at that video. I just did it like last week if you're unsure about this or you think I'm stretching things. So, in effect, these people know that the Bible is real. They know Jesus is coming back. They know that the prophecies are real. They built it right into their landscape. Now, what happened to Abraham Lincoln? Well, he was turned into an ape, wasn't he? In the Planet of the Apes. This happened after he was possessed. Possession. The timeline changed. Abraham Lincoln turned into an ape. So instead of Abe, A-B-E, the B got flipped around and turned into a P, turning him into an ape. So what is this about? Well, this is regression. This is zombie-like behavior. Just like in the movie Nope, when the ape eats the people on the television set. Because it's all connected. And it all happened in Planet of the Apes through the tip of a needle. Remember, they were experimenting with a cure for some disease. They injected these apes, which then had the ability to speak, and then the humans lost the ability to speak. And that's what happened in Planet of the Apes. So now you're starting to see the big picture, so to speak. You're seeing the Planet of the Apes storyline right here laid out in the capital of the United States. The tip of the needle, Lincoln, the tidal basin, the dark pool, the infection, and everything else. Now let's keep going with this because there's so much more. So, how else do we know that Abraham Lincoln is connected to the needle? Well, other than the fact that the needle is pointing right at him, under his presidency, the hypodermic needle was invented. This is from History.com. And they talk all about how during the Civil War, the hypodermic needle was invented. Why? Well, it was invented and used on the widest scale ever to treat Union soldiers with opium to treat them for their injuries. So in effect, the first opioid crisis happened under Lincoln. And it's no mistake that all of this is happening again right now in modern times, this opioid crisis. Let's read this article. During the Civil War, military hospitals considered opioids to be essential medicine. Doctors and nurses used opium and morphine to treat soldiers' pain, stop internal bleeding, and mitigate vomiting and diarrhea caused by infectious diseases. However, this led to some soldiers to develop opioid addictions, either during the war or afterwards, when they sought medical treatment for wartime injuries or illnesses. For many Civil War veterans, opioid addictions were life-ruining. Veterans' dependency made them fatigued and emaciated and could lead to a fatal overdose. In some cases, opioid addiction could threaten a veteran's ability to receive a pension. In 1895, a Union veteran named Charles Williams stated in an application to a soldier's home that he was totally unable to earn a living since he had contracted the opium habit during the war. By the time Williams applied to the soldier's home, the scope of the problem had grown beyond veterans. America was in the midst of its first major opioid crisis, fueled by the rise of injectable morphine that some doctors had begun administering during the Civil War. The specific plight of veterans helped draw attention to the issue, raising awareness among doctors and the general public. Opioid use has a long history in the U.S. Before the Civil War, doctors commonly prescribed opium pills and laudanum, which was a mixture of opium and alcohol. These opiates were available in many drugstores without a prescription. When the war began, both the Union and the Confederacy considered it important to stock their hospitals with drugs. In addition to opium and laudanum, some Union doctors also started using the hypodermic syringe, a relatively new invention, to inject another opioid, morphine, straight into the soldier's veins. These were the advents of the use of the hypodermic needle. Wow. Now, I'll put links to all this, so I'm not going to read through all of these articles, but this proves the connection between the needle pointing at Lincoln's memorial and the one outlined in the landscape. Now, let's get into some other aspects of Abraham Lincoln, because, as we all know, he was assassinated in 1865, or so we're told. But what you didn't know is that the years leading up to his death, a very interesting and major multi-million dollar, and in today's standards, billion-dollar project was happening in plain sight. A project that didn't make any kind of sense. The telegraph cable. More specifically, the transatlantic telegraph cable. Now, why did this cable not make sense? Well, it wasn't too many decades before this that America had gained independence from Britain and didn't really like Britain all that much. But yet, we were bringing to bear one of the most major projects in the history of the world to connect ourselves to Britain. And I believe we never really were free from Britain. I believe there was an arrangement made, and there were infiltrators who immediately entered into high levels of U.S. government and basically retied the knot between America and England. We never really were free, and this is where we get taxation and all these other things that were never part of the original plan for this country. You know, Social Security and all these other things that weren't in the Constitution, but yet we have today. Still slaves to the beast. Now, here's another thing. The telegraph was an integral process that was relied upon to win the Civil War. In fact, Lincoln spent most of his time in his telegraph room. Now, I found this article, this historical article, talking about all this. We're going to read through some of this. The importance of the telegraph in the U.S. Civil War, Part 3. The Union's use of the telegraph. Now, let's read this, and then we'll talk about what all this means. Scroll down here. Look at that. There's a guy on top of a telegraph pole in this picture here. That's what it appears to be going on there to get the signal. President Lincoln in the telegraph office. As an early adopter of the telegraph, Lincoln realized the importance of building a strong telegraphic infrastructure within the government and the military. Now, history does not tell us that there was a direct connection between Lincoln and building the transatlantic telegraph cable, but it happened right under his presidency. So you had to ask yourself, why doesn't history talk about his involvement in it? Obviously, he was the president of the United States. So this was a huge project. Where is the historical documentation about why this telegraph line was built, his involvement in it, and everything else? And to me, it almost seems like a massive cover-up. And now let's keep reading here. Lincoln realized the importance of building a strong telegraphic infrastructure within the government and the military. With the Union facing the prospect of a 1,000-mile battlefront, the telegraph gave Lincoln an unprecedented ability to converse with his military leaders in the field as though he were in the tent with them, and power to assume the role of commander-in-chief in a more titular sense. Now, we've talked about the fact that the telegraph was the precursor to the telephone, wasn't it? We went from copper telegraph lines to copper telephone lines. We talked about the telephone booth being a sort of time machine. Well, it appears as though Lincoln was already channeling this feeling long before the telephone became common, because he talked about this telegraph as if he had transported himself right to the front lines with his military leaders. Before Lincoln could exercise any degree of control over the nation's dispersed military forces, it was necessary to organize the telegraphic capabilities of the Union. At the start of the Civil War, all government telegraphs passed through one central communications hub. Not even the War Department had its own separate line. The organization of the USMTC soon remedied that deficiency when its headquarters were established inside the War Department. By March of 1862, the telegraph had become so vital to the prosecution of the war that Secretary Stanton moved the USMTC telegraph office into the old library room on the second floor front, adjoining his own quarters. In short order, the telegraph office of the War Department became Lincoln's Situation Room, where the president not only monitored events through incoming messages, but also initiated communications directly to the field. Now think about the ramifications of this. The modern Situation Room was the vintage, basically, telephone booth. Transporting yourself to the battlefront. Lincoln spent more time in the telegraph office than in any other location during his presidency. So, there you have it from the historical records, tying everything we've been researching into one full, complete circle of the bizarre. Now, let's keep going with this, because there's even more. Now, history tells us that there were many attempts made to cross the Atlantic. Many of those attempts happened under Lincoln's presidency. The final attempt happened just after his death. And like I said, it seems like some kind of big cover-up, because nowhere in the historical record do they talk about Lincoln being involved in any way with this. I believe that there was a secret pact that Lincoln had with the monarchy to stay under her control, but to pretend that America had freedom. This is why he fought the South so hard, because they didn't want to fall in line with the new order of the time, which was to establish a federal government that was much more intrusive than the original founding fathers had set out for. And so, because Lincoln won, we have the America we have today. So it would make sense that this huge step of completing this telegraph, this huge step, it would be a huge step for the monarchy to be able to exert real-time control of presidents through the telegraph and later the telephone. I mean, why else would they bring all these billions of dollars to bear to communicate with Britain? That makes no sense. After we had just allegedly broke free from her. So, Lincoln had an obsession with the copper telegraph line, didn't he? And this makes all the sense in the world as to why they put him on the copper penny, which used to be solid copper and now is copper plated. Now, why did they change the penny from solid copper to copper pennies? Well, I have an idea as to why they did that. Come back into the chat with you guys. The American coins, the coinage of America, are all full of copper, aren't they? And we talked about that. And basically what it was a bank in plain sight. It was the hoarding of copper in circulation in plain sight so that it could later be pulled out of circulation and used for the 5G base stations, which require a lot of copper. What better way to mine all the copper that you can out of the earth, put it into circulation so that you could later pull it out at your whim to use it to build the infrastructure for the next prison of the future, which is 5G and 6G technology. And this is why they changed the penny from being solid copper to only copper coating. Let me see who can get the answer. Now, this requires, as they like to say, 5D chess thinking. Why would they take the copper out of a penny and only coat it in copper if they knew they were going to use the copper from all the other coins to basically build the 5G network? Somebody will get this one because you guys are smart. Why would they take the copper out of the pennies, you guys? Someone will get it. I'm going to wait until you guys get it. I might give you a clue. Marcy says to fool you. Yeah, it's definitely a trick. Why would they pull the copper out of the pennies and make them only a coating of copper? Let's see. Pennies are cheap and get lost. Yes, Brooke nailed it. Nobody keeps pennies anymore, do they? Pennies get thrown on the ground. Nobody even takes the time to stop and pick a penny up. So they become lost copper, don't they? They become orphaned copper, which is not easy to find. People don't even throw copper pennies into wishing wells anymore. Why do you think they came up with wishing wells? To collect as much of the copper pennies as they could, right? So, by taking the copper out of the pennies, they don't have to worry about losing that copper. Now you're starting to understand what's really happening. This has been a plan for decades and decades and decades and decades. Yes, Sharon, people don't care about pennies. So they get thrown, they get lost in wherever, cracks in the bottoms of cars, whatever. Now, Lincoln was the first possessed president. How do I know this? Well, history admits that he and his wife held seances right in the White House. And I believe this is the first time the demonic spirit entered the president. Now, those of you who ice fish, what do you use to drill through the ice? Let's see who gets it. See how many fishermen there are out there. What do you use to drill through the ice? If you're a fisherman, what is the technical name for it? Oops. So you get it first. Let me zoom this up correctly. Okay. Ice auger. Thank you, Gub15. So, is it a mistake that the spiral auger is in the word inaugurate, which means to drill something into something else, to possess through a portal? I don't think that's an accident. Inaugurate. Use a spiral portal to insert something into something else. Make it an empty vessel to be filled with something else. So, that's about all I had today. Again, we'll be back on tomorrow with Mask Off, Mask On. Remember, after the buildings fell, they said, don't wear a mask, don't wear a mask, everything's fine. 19 years later, they say you have to wear a mask. We're going to look at the bizarre juxtaposition of those two events and the whole mask ritual and not being able to breathe. And there's something to that on a spiritual level. Let's go into the chat, see what you guys are up to. Crazy times, you guys. Now, I'm going to leave you with, I think I'm going to leave you with some images here. For those of you that deny the connection between Trump and these towers. Cover a little bit of this more tomorrow. But this man was much more involved in the events of that day than we'll ever know. We'll keep looking at it and trying to break it down. All right, you guys. Oh gosh, we got the porn bots in here again. I'm gonna let you guys go and get rid of these bots. This is when we know we're over the target. It always happens when we're over the target. Same thing's happening in the Facebook group. Fortunately, we got a hold over that, but as soon as the Facebook group started taking off, all of a sudden here came the bots. You can't even report them to Facebook. They simply, you can't report them. There's no way to report these. They just keep coming. Facebook does nothing about it because the reason for it is so that they can disrupt the truth. And these bots come directly from the platform to control the truth. So now you know we're over the target, and this is the place to be to find out the truth about all this stuff. I love each and every one of you guys. I'm going to start working on tomorrow's show, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Take care and be safe.